To execute crispy, clean trap bar deadlifts, you're going to assume a stance that is similar to your conventional barbell deadlift stance. Now there can be a little bit of variance here based off of the type of trap bar you're using, your anthropometrics, and the handles you're using, but generally a good starting point is adapting your conventional barbell deadlift stance and then bringing your feet out slightly or in based off of what feels most comfortable for you. From here, you're gonna think about gripping the mid part of the handles and then aligning the midfoot with your hands. Basically, we wanna make sure that the text bar, or trap bar for that matter, is staying over the midfoot so we are able to create more balance, but also displace the most amount of force possible into the ground. So now once we have our grip and our stance, we're gonna think about getting into a nice rigid position, making sure that our back is nice and set, and making sure that our hip and torso angle are in a position that are gonna be cohesive with the pull we are doing based off of the handle height we're using. Now, as we stand up with that weight, a phenomenal cue that I like to think about is to drive the quads into the ground or drive the feet into the ground, really push through the ground and think about contracting the quads as you stand. And then as you get to lockout, think about squeezing the quads, glutes, and keeping those lats in a nice packed position. You just want to have a nice, smooth, locked out position. So there's no need to go into hyperextension and create a range of motion that we don't really need to achieve in this exercise. Now, during the eccentric portion or during the descent in this movement, you're going to think about breaking at the hips and knees almost simultaneously. Now, there will be a little bit of variance here based off of your height and the type of trap bar deadlift you are doing, but generally breaking at the same time will be your best bet. And a good rule of thumb is to just think about maintaining the balance over the midfoot. If you're feeling that you're falling forward or that you're falling too back, then more than likely you're breaking too soon or too much at either the hips or knees. So that might be one area to check out. Or you might be rounding at the torso. So that's another area you might want to look at. But from there, you're then going to set the trap bar down, repeat the process of bracing, pulling and pushing through the floor, and then repeating the descent process once again. So when it comes to muscles worked in the trap bar deadlift, something that's important to understand is that your muscles worked will vary based off of the type of trap bar deadlift you are performing. So basically, there will be some variance between like a low handle trap bar deadlift and a high handle trap bar deadlift. So right off the bat, one of the prime movers in the trap bar deadlift is going to be the quads. Now, as you perform deeper knee flexion, you're gonna have a bit more quad activity as they're gonna have to work harder to extend the knee. So in something like a low handle trap bar deadlift, you may have a bit more quad dominance compared to a high handle position where you're adapting a slightly higher hip position compared to something like your conventional barbell deadlift. Now moving up the chain from there, you're also gonna have some hamstring involvement as they're gonna play to extend the hips. Now that will vary again based off of the type of trap bar deadlift you are performing. If you are performing a higher hip position trap bar deadlift, so let's say you're adapting a hip position that's similar to your conventional barbell deadlift position, then you may have slightly more hamstring activation as you are starting from a more lengthened position. Working our way up from the hamstring and quads, we're also gonna have glute involvement. The glutes are gonna be highly active depending on whatever trap bar deadlift you are performing, as they are gonna be the prime movers to extend the hip, especially during the concentric portion of the movement. So moving up to the torso, we're also gonna have oblique involvement, core involvement, erector spinae involvement. All the smaller musculature of the torso that are involved in creating stability in the torso are gonna be involved in the trap bar deadlift. Now, making our way even further up the body, we're also gonna have trap involvement and upper back musculature involvement. Generally, when people perform high rep or high volume trap bar deadlift days, they are usually smoked after with their traps and upper back musculature. And when we think about how these muscles are designed to function, it makes sense. Because we are having that weight in a more neutral hanging position, these muscles are gonna be highly active in stabilizing that weight through the concentric, eccentric, and locked out portion of the movement. On top of that, we're also gonna have obviously some lower leg musculature involvement as they are gonna play a role in our overall mechanics of the legs, plus some forearm involvement if you're performing high volume sets with higher loads than you're used to doing in the conventional barbell deadlift. Prepare yourself because your grip is going to be taxed. But now let's talk about and take it a level further and talk about some differences that you can expect from using a low handle trap bar deadlift and a high handle trap bar deadlift. So one of the aspects that I absolutely love about the trap bar deadlift is just how versatile this tool can be. So we have low handle trap bar deadlifts high handle trap bar deadlifts, and then we can adapt different hip positions with those based off the adaptations we're going for. So with something like a low handle trap bar deadlift, we're generally gonna have a hip position that is going to be similar to our squat patterning. Plus, we're gonna have deeper knee flexion. This means that this variation can be a great tool for building up the legs, but also focusing on how we're creating power in the concentric. In the squat, we're going through an eccentric to concentric loading pattern with a bit of a stretch reflex in there at the bottom. In the trap bar deadlift, we're coming from a dead stop position to a concentric and then lowering to an eccentric and then repeating that process from a more dead stop position. In a high handle trap bar deadlift, you're going to adapt a hip position that is usually similar to your conventional barbell deadlift. Now there is some variance there, as in the conventional barbell deadlift, we need to clear the knees, so the shins do have to be a bit more vertical, whereas in the trap bar deadlift, we don't really have to worry about that. So we can adapt a slightly more flexed knee position. Now you can play with your hip position even further in the high handle variation, so you can adapt a hip position that does align more so with your conventional barbell deadlift, so you can adapt a slightly more vertical shin position. There really isn't a perfect one size fits all, and the type of variation you use should be based off the type of adaptations you are going for. So that being said, hopefully that helps clear up any confusion on a low handle and high handle trap bar deadlift. Generally speaking, with the low handle trap bar deadlift, we're gonna have a bit more leg involvement, as we are gonna have deeper knee and hip flexion. Then in the high handle trap bar deadlift, we're gonna have a bit more of a posterior focus, as the hips are gonna be in a higher position, the hamstrings are gonna be lengthened, and it's gonna resemble somewhat of a similar position to our conventional barbell deadlift. Now obviously, once again, there is a little bit of variance there. All right guys, that wraps up my trap bar deadlift video. Hopefully this cleared up any questions you might have on this movement. And also remember, I have filmed a trap bar versus a conventional barbell deadlift video. So if you have questions on those two exercises, make sure you check that out. But as always guys, hit me with questions as you have them, and drop the video a like, drop the channel, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one.